The night sky over Earth was quiet, but in the city square there was laughter that did not belong to humans. 3 alien girls stood under the bright lights, their tall, slim shapes glowing with strange silver skin. Their eyes were sharp, their voices smooth, and when they spoke, the sound carried far. People turned their heads, curious, some even nervous, because the visitors were not laughing with the humans. They were laughing at them. The first alien girl held up a piece of bread and sniffed it with disgust. "This is food? Dry, plain, and weak. No wonder these humans are so slow." She tossed it to the ground and her sisters burst out laughing. The second girl kicked the bread aside and pointed to the old cars rolling down the street. "Look at their machines. They call this technology? Loud, dirty, and crawling like insects." Their laughter grew louder, echoing off the buildings. The humans standing nearby lowered their eyes. Some whispered in anger. Others clenched their fists, but no one stepped forward. Everyone knew the aliens came from a place far more advanced. A world with cities in the clouds and ships that crossed galaxies. Against them, Earth seemed small, weak, and behind in time. But there was one man who did not bow his head. He stood at the edge of the square, silent, his arms crossed. His name was Daniel. He was not a soldier, not a leader, not even someone important. He was just a worker, someone who lived a simple life. Yet in his eyes there was a calm strength that the aliens noticed even while they laughed. The third alien girl pointed at Daniel. "Look at him. He does not even speak. Is he too scared? Or is he too foolish?" Again they laughed, the sound sharp like knives. People around Daniel looked at him, waiting for his answer, but Daniel said nothing. His silence was not weakness, it was patience. The laughter continued, growing cruel. The aliens mocked the streets, the air, even the humans' way of walking. Children hid behind their parents, embarrassed. Old men shook their heads. The whole square felt heavy with shame. Yet Daniel's stillness drew all eyes. He was not moving, not speaking, but somehow he was not defeated. One of the alien girls walked closer to him. Her silver hair shimmered under the streetlights as she leaned near. "Tell us, human man," she whispered loud enough for the crowd to hear. "Why do you not defend your world? Are you proud of this dirt and smoke?" Her sisters laughed again, waiting for him to crumble. Daniel finally lifted his head. His eyes met hers, calm and steady. For a moment the laughter died. Something in his gaze carried weight, a silent message that words could not match. The alien girl's smile faltered for half a second, though she quickly covered it with another laugh. He did not speak. Not yet. Instead, he turned slowly, scanning the 3 girls as if he was studying them. The crowd felt the tension rise. Everyone waited. What would he say? What could one human do against visitors from the stars? The girls thought they had already won. To them, Earth was a playground for mockery. But Daniel's silence planted a seed of unease. Why was this human not afraid? Why did he look at them as if he knew something they did not? The first alien girl crossed her arms and smirked. "You think you are better than us? You think silence will save you? Humans are weak. Your planet is weak. Nothing here can ever impress us." Her words were meant to sting. But Daniel only tilted his head slightly, his eyes never leaving hers. The crowd leaned forward, hearts pounding as if something important was about to happen. The city square was no longer just a place of laughter. It had become a stage. On one side, 3 alien girls who mocked an entire planet. On the other, one silent man whose calm presence was louder than their words. The suspense hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. No one knew it yet, but this night was only the beginning. The aliens thought Earth was a joke. Soon they would discover the truth, and the laughter they carried would turn into something they could never have imagined. The night after their mocking display in the city square, the 3 alien girls sat together on the balcony of their guest quarters. From there they could see the glitter of Earth City lights stretching into the distance. But instead of admiration, their voices were once again filled with laughter. The first girl leaned on the railing, her silver hair falling across her glowing skin. "These humans think they are clever, but they are nothing. Did you see how they bowed their heads when we mocked them? They have no pride." The second girl sipped from a crystal cup filled with glowing blue liquid brought from their own planet. She smirked. Not all bowed. There was one man who stood still. He looked at us as if he knew something. But it does not matter. Humans cannot change what they are. They are weak. The third girl laughed softly, her sharp teeth flashing under the moonlight. I almost enjoyed that silent one. He had eyes like stone, But eyes cannot win battles. Eyes cannot impress us. They sat in silence for a short while, listening to the sounds of the human city below. Cars honked. Voices rose and fell. Music drifted through the streets. Everything was so ordinary, so imperfect, compared to their homeworld of crystal towers and floating gardens. And then, the first girl clapped her hands together. "Let us make this more fun. Let us make a bet." Her sisters turned to her with curiosity. "We say humans are weak. We laugh at their world. But what if one could prove us wrong? What if one human tried to impress us?" The second girl tilted her head. "Impossible. No human has power, beauty, or wisdom to match us." The third girl smiled. "And that is why the bet is interesting. Who knows? Maybe they will surprise us." The first girl's voice grew sharp, playful but dangerous. "Here is the wager. The next human who dares to approach us, we will test him. If he fails, we laugh louder than ever. If he succeeds, then perhaps we admit Earth is not as worthless as we claim." The sisters agreed, laughing at the idea. To them, it was a game, nothing more. They believed no man could ever pass such a test. But as they laughed, Daniel walked alone through the dark streets of the city. His mind replayed the moment in the square, the way their laughter had cut through the crowd. He remembered the shame in the faces of his people. He remembered the girl's question, "Why do you not defend your world?" And he remembered the silence that followed. Daniel was not a man who chased fights. He was not quick with words, nor was he born with great power. But deep inside, something old and steady burned, a pride in being human, a pride in Earth. And though he had not spoken that night, he knew he could not remain silent forever. The following day, the alien girls strolled through the city again, their glowing presence drawing crowds. Once more, they laughed at everything. The simple food, the rough streets, the humans who looked too nervous to meet their eyes. And then Daniel stepped forward. The laughter quieted. The aliens turned, surprised. The crowd parted, whispering. The silent man from last night had returned, but this time his silence was not empty. It was heavy with intention. The first alien girl smirked. "So the stone-eyed human dares to show himself again." The second girl's voice dripped with mockery. "Perhaps he thinks he can impress us. Should we make him our test?" The third girl nodded slowly, her eyes narrowing with interest. "Yes, let us see what this one is made of." The crowd gasped as the three sisters stepped closer to Daniel, their silver hair glowing under the sun. "Human," the first girl declared, her voice carrying across the square. "We have made a bet. You are the test. If you can show us something worthy, we will admit Earth is not worthless. If you fail, your people will live forever under our laughter." The silence that followed was deep and sharp. Daniel's face was calm, but his heart pounded like a drum. The eyes of the whole city were on him. The aliens had set the rules. The game had begun, and somewhere in the crowd people began to hope. The city square grew silent after the alien girls made their bet. People stood frozen, waiting to see if Daniel would speak. His calm eyes moved across the crowd, then slowly lifted to the three glowing figures before him. He did not shout, he did not argue. Instead, he said in a low, steady voice, "Tell me your test." The words were simple, but they carried a strange weight. The aliens had expected fear, maybe excuses, maybe even anger. Instead, they heard confidence. It unsettled them, though they hid it behind sharp smiles. The first girl stepped forward. Her silver skin glimmered in the sunlight. "Very well, human. We will test your strength. On our world, only the strong survive. Show us if Earth can raise a warrior." At once, her sisters clapped their hands, and from the shadows of the square, a strange object appeared. It was a tall metal pillar, smooth and heavy, glowing faintly with alien markings. The crowd gasped. No one had seen such a thing before. The second girl's voice rang out. "Lift it. If you cannot, then Earth is as weak as we believed." The pillar looked impossible for a man to move. Whispers spread through the crowd. "No one can lift that. They are mocking us again. This is unfair." But Daniel did not flinch. He stepped closer, studying the pillar with quiet eyes. He placed his hands on the cold surface, closed his eyes, and pulled. His muscles strained, his breath grew heavy, but the pillar refused to move. The aliens laughed, their voices sharp. "See? Even their strongest cannot lift what is nothing to us." The first girl smirked, placing her slender hand on the pillar. With a single motion, she raised it above her head with no effort. The crowd gasped again, half in awe, half in humiliation. Daniel did not bow his head. He looked at her calmly and said, "Strength is not only in arms. Sometimes it is in will. Sometimes it is in sacrifice." His words puzzled the aliens, but his tone was steady like stone. The third girl narrowed her eyes. "Then let us test your will." She waved her hand and a new object appeared, a cage of glowing energy. Inside the cage was a small bird from Earth, frightened, its wings beating desperately against the shimmering walls. "If you can free this creature without breaking the cage, you pass. If you fail, its death will prove your weakness." The crowd gasped again. The bird chirped in panic, trapped by alien power. Daniel walked closer, his brows drawn in focus. He studied the glowing cage. The energy pulsed with strange light, something no human tool could cut. Whispers rose. "It's impossible. They're toying with him. No human can match their tricks." Yet Daniel did not turn away. He crouched beside the cage, whispering softly to the trembling bird. His voice was calm, soothing, like he was speaking not only to the creature but to the crowd watching. Slowly he pressed his hand near the cage, not to break it, but to follow the rhythm of the pulsing light. His eyes narrowed, studying the pattern. With steady breath, he timed the moment when the energy flickered faintly. In that instant, he slipped his hand through the light, grabbed the bird gently and pulled it free before the cage could close again. The crowd erupted in gasps and shouts of awe. The bird flew into the sky, its wings flashing in the sunlight. The cage collapsed into sparks and vanished. The aliens froze. Their laughter died. For the first time, their faces showed doubt. "Impossible," the second girl whispered. "No human should have seen the weakness in our design." Daniel stood tall, watching the bird soar. "Strength is not only in the body," he said quietly. "Sometimes it is in the eyes that see what others miss." The square thundered with cheers. Humans shouted his name, their voices rising higher than the aliens' mocking had ever reached. The three sisters exchanged uneasy glances. The bet that had begun as a game was now something else. They had tested him once and he had passed. But they would not stop. Their pride would not allow it. The first girl's eyes narrowed, her smile sharp. "Then we will make the next test harder." The crowd hushed again. The game was not over. The real battle was just beginning. The cheers of the crowd still echoed through the square as the little bird disappeared into the blue sky. Daniel stood tall, his chest rising and falling with calm breath. He had done the impossible. He had beaten the alien cage without brute force. For the first time, Earth's people felt a spark of pride. They shouted his name, their voices strong, as if his victory belonged to them all. But the three alien girls did not cheer. Their glowing faces turned cold and their sharp eyes locked on Daniel. The first girl whispered something to her sisters, and the laughter that once flowed so easily from their mouths did not come this time. Instead, there was silence between them. Finally, the second girl stepped forward. Her silver hair shimmered under the sunlight, but her smile was thin and tight. "You were clever, human, but cleverness alone is not enough. We will not be fooled by a trick. If you want to impress us, you must prove your heart." The crowd grew still. The word heart carried weight. Nobody knew what kind of trial she meant, but they could feel the danger in her tone. With a wave of her hand, the second girl summoned another test. The ground shimmered, and in an instant a glowing wall of fire appeared, circling around the center of the square. Inside the ring of fire, a small human child stood, trembling with fear. The heat rose high, the flames roared, and the child's cries pierced the silence. The people screamed in panic. Mothers covered their children's eyes. Men shouted in anger, but none dared to run through the flames. The heat was too fierce, it would burn anyone alive. The alien girl's smile returned, sharp and cruel. "Save the child, human. If your heart is as strong as your words, you will walk through the fire. If not, your people will know you are no different from the rest." Gasps spread through the crowd. This was no game. This was life and death. The fire cracked loudly, daring Daniel to move. Everyone turned to him, their hearts pounding. Daniel's face remained steady, though sweat already shone on his forehead from the heat. He looked at the crying child, then back at the aliens. He did not argue, he did not ask for mercy. He simply stepped forward. The flames licked the ground before him, tall and merciless. A man beside him shouted, "Don't do it, you'll die." But Daniel did not stop. He pulled off his jacket and wrapped it around his arms. The leather would not last long, but it was all he had. Then, without hesitation, he ran into the wall of fire. The crowd screamed. The heat roared, smoke rising in thick waves. For a moment, all they saw was flame. But then, through the fire, Daniel's shape appeared. His body pressed forward, arms shielding the child as he reached him. The boy clung to him, sobbing. Daniel turned his back to the fire, and with a deep breath, he pushed forward again. The flames clawed at him, burning his clothes, searing his skin. But his grip did not loosen. Step by step, he carried the child through the fire until at last he broke free of the ring and stumbled onto the ground outside. The crowd erupted. People rushed forward, cheering, crying, clapping their hands as Daniel handed the boy safely to his mother. His arms were blistered, his skin darkened by the burn, but his eyes remained steady. He had done what no one else dared. For the first time, the alien girls did not laugh. Their glowing faces showed something new, confusion and perhaps even a touch of fear. The third girl spoke slowly, her voice softer than before. "Why would you risk yourself for someone so small? He is nothing to you." Daniel looked up at her with tired but steady eyes, because he is human, and because no life is too small to protect. The crowd roared again, louder than before, their voices rising like thunder. Pride swelled in their hearts, and even the most fearful among them lifted their heads high. For once, Earth did not feel weak. The three sisters exchanged uneasy glances. They had come to Earth expecting laughter and easy victory. But now, standing before this scarred man, they felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. And deep inside, a new thought began to grow. Perhaps this human was more dangerous than they imagined. The square was alive with sound. Humans shouted Daniel's name, their voices filled with pride and hope. Mothers held their children close. Fathers raised their fists in respect. Daniel stood in the middle of it all, burned but unbroken. His arms still shook from the fire, yet his eyes remained calm. But the alien girls were silent. Their glowing faces no longer carried easy laughter. Instead, their smiles were forced, thin and sharp. Their pride burned hotter than the fire Daniel had crossed. They could not allow him to win so easily. The first girl narrowed her eyes. Strength and sacrifice. Cleverness and heart. You have shown much, human, but these things are not enough. If you wish to prove Earth is more than dirt, then show us your truth. Daniel tilted his head slightly. Truth? The second girl stepped forward, her silver hair shining in the wind. Yes, we will look inside you. We will test your spirit. She raised her hand, and the air rippled like water. In an instant, a strange portal appeared, swirling with shadows and light. Gasps spread through the crowd. No one knew what lay beyond, but the air around it felt cold, heavy, and dangerous. The third girl's voice was smooth, but it carried menace. Enter this place. If you are pure, you will walk out alive. If not, you will be lost forever. The crowd erupted in panic. It's a trap, someone shouted. Don't go. But Daniel stepped forward without hesitation. He knew it was no trap of steel or fire. It was a trap of the soul. The portal swallowed him, and the world outside vanished. Inside, there was silence. Daniel found himself standing in a dark void, the ground soft like mist under his feet. Shapes moved in the shadows, familiar shapes, faces from his past. His father's disappointed eyes, his mother's tired tears, friends he had failed, mistakes he had made. One by one, they stepped out of the darkness to confront him. Why did you not save me? One whispered. You are weak, another hissed. You are nothing, a voice boomed. The word stabbed deeper than any weapon. Sweat dripped down his face, though no heat burned here. His breath grew heavy. He wanted to close his eyes to shut it all out. But then he remembered the little boy in the fire clinging to him with trust. He remembered the bird he freed flying into the sky, and he remembered the crowd outside, watching with hope that he might be the one to lift their shame. Daniel straightened his back. He looked into the faces of his fears and whispered, I am human. I make mistakes, I fall, but I rise again. That is my truth. The shadows trembled. The voices cracked. Slowly, they melted away into mist, leaving the void silent once more. Ahead of him, a light appeared, bright and warm. Daniel walked toward it, his steps steady until the portal opened again and he stepped back into the city square. The crowd gasped in shock. Only a few minutes had passed outside, but his clothes were damp with sweat, and his eyes seemed older, heavier, as if he had fought a great battle within. The alien girls stared at him in silence. They had expected him to fail, to collapse under the weight of his own weaknesses, but he had returned stronger. The second girl's voice shook slightly as she spoke. No human should have survived that trial. What are you? Daniel's answer was simple. I am nothing more than human. And that is enough. The square exploded with cheers once more. People stamped their feet, clapped their hands, and cried tears of pride. For the first time in history, Earth felt powerful, not because of weapons or machines, but because of one man's spirit. The three alien sisters exchanged uneasy glances. Their pride had carried them this far, but something new stirred inside them, an emotion they had not felt before. Was it respect? Was it fear? Or was it something even stranger? Something they dared not yet name. The bet was no longer a game. It was changing them piece by piece, and soon their laughter would no longer hide the truth forming inside their hearts. The sun was sinking low, painting the city square in shades of orange and gold. The crowd buzzed with excitement, their voices full of pride. They had seen Daniel overcome trials of strength, heart, and spirit. To them, he was already a hero. But the alien sisters stood in silence, their glowing eyes filled with conflict. The first girl clenched her fists. She had never been defeated before, never been questioned. Her pride burned like a fire. This cannot continue, she whispered to her sisters. If we allow him one more victory, Earth will stand above us. The second girl's face was colder, but her eyes betrayed something softer, uncertainty. She looked at Daniel, his burned arms, his steady breath, his calm eyes. There was something in him she could not name. Something dangerous, yes, but also something she respected. The third girl remained quiet the longest. She stared at Daniel, her lips pressed tightly together. Inside her heart, a strange weight grew. She had laughed at him once, mocked him. But now her laughter felt hollow. He is not like the others, she whispered. The sisters argued in hushed voices, but the crowd waited in suspense. Everyone knew one final trial was coming. Everyone felt the tension like a storm waiting to break. At last, the first girl raised her hand and the square grew silent. Human, she declared, her voice sharp. We have seen your strength, your heart, and your spirit. But we will not accept you yet. There is one final test. If you pass, Earth may stand. If you fail, Earth will be nothing but dust beneath our feet. The crowd gasped. The air turned heavy. All eyes locked on Daniel. He stood calmly, though his body carried scars and exhaustion. Tell me, he said simply. The third girl's eyes glowed as she lifted her hand. Suddenly the ground shook and a massive beast appeared in the square. It was unlike anything the humans had ever seen. Taller than a building, with black scales and eyes burning like fire. Its teeth were long, its claws sharp, and its roar shook the windows around them. Children screamed. Men pulled their families back. The beast stomped the ground, leaving cracks in the stone. The aliens watched with cruel smiles, except the third, whose eyes lingered on Daniel with hidden worry. This is your final trial, the first girl said. Defeat the beast, or die with your pride, the crowd cried out in panic. It's impossible. No man can fight that. He will be killed. But Daniel stepped forward, his jaw set, his eyes steady. The beast roared again, charging at him. Dust and stone flew as it pounded the earth. Daniel rolled aside, barely escaping its crushing claws. He had no weapon, no armor, nothing but his will. Yet he did not back down. He grabbed a broken metal rod from the ground and faced the monster. The rod was nothing against the beast's scales, but he held it like a sword. When the creature lunged again, Daniel leapt forward, jamming the rod into its eye. The beast roared in pain, thrashing violently. The crowd shouted in disbelief. He heard it. Daniel was thrown to the ground, his body battered, but he forced himself up again. Blood ran down his arm. His breath came heavy, but his eyes still burned with determination. The beast circled him, snarling, ready for another strike. This time, Daniel did not wait. He sprinted toward the creature, dodging its claws, leaping onto its arm and climbing with all his strength. The beast shook wildly, trying to throw him off, but Daniel held tight, his fingers bleeding from the effort. Higher and higher he climbed until he reached its head. With a roar of his own, he drove the rod deep into the beast's second eye. The monster howled, blinded, staggering in pain. The ground shook as it thrashed, but Daniel leapt free, rolling across the stone just as the beast crashed into the square, defeated. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the sound of Daniel's ragged breathing. Then slowly the crowd erupted. Cheers thundered like a storm. People wept and shouts of his name filled the sky. The alien sisters stared, stunned. The first girl's pride shattered. Her lips trembled with disbelief. The second girl's coldness melted into something softer, something like awe. And the third, her heart pounded in her chest. She had laughed at Earth, but now her cheeks burned with something she had never felt before. Respect, admiration, even longing. Daniel stood weak but unbroken, his eyes lifting toward the aliens. "Your tests are done," he said, his voice low but strong. "Now tell me, do you still laugh at Earth?" The sisters could not answer. For the first time, their silence was louder than their laughter had ever been. The beast's body lay broken in the center of the square. Its roars silenced forever. Smoke rose from the cracked stone, and the air was heavy with the smell of dust and fire. The humans stood frozen for a long moment, staring at Daniel, who leaned on the bent metal rod for balance. His body was bruised, his skin burned, his breath uneven, but he stood. That single image burned into the minds of everyone present. Then the crowd erupted like thunder. Voices rose in waves, chanting his name, their cheers filling the air. Tears streamed down faces, pride replacing shame. For the first time in memory, Earth felt stronger than the stars above. But the alien sisters did not cheer. Their glowing figures stood silent, their eyes fixed on Daniel. For so long they had believed humans were beneath them, weak, foolish, laughable. Yet now, in front of this scarred man, they felt their pride collapse. He had faced every trial, every trap, and emerged stronger each time. The first sister clenched her fists. Her pride was shattered, but her spirit refused to admit defeat. She opened her mouth to mock him again, but no words came. The truth was too heavy. The second sister stepped forward slowly. Her voice, once cold, trembled now. "You should be dead," she whispered. "No human should have endured what you faced, and yet, here you stand." Daniel lifted his tired eyes toward her. His voice was calm, steady, even though his body shook. "I told you, I am nothing more than human. But being human is enough." The third sister's eyes glistened. She could no longer laugh. She could no longer hide the strange fire burning in her chest. She had mocked him once, but now she looked at him with something else, something she had never felt for any being in the galaxy. Her lips parted, but no sound came. The crowd quieted, waiting for the sister's answer. Everyone held their breath. Would they laugh again? Would they admit the truth? Finally, the first sister lowered her head. Her silver hair fell across her face as she spoke, her voice breaking. "We came to mock you, to prove that Earth was dirt beneath our feet, but we were wrong." She lifted her gaze, her pride fighting against her words. "You have shown us strength, heart, and spirit greater than we have ever seen. We cannot laugh anymore." The second sister nodded, her cold mask gone. "You have broken our pride, human, and perhaps you have broken something else inside us too." The third sister stepped closer. Her voice was soft, almost trembling. "We laughed at Earth, but now we see. There is something here we never understood. Something powerful, something alive." Her glowing eyes locked on Daniel's tired face. "And it is you who showed it to us." The crowd gasped, whispers spreading fast. Some humans could already see it. The way the sisters looked at him, the way their voices shook. Their laughter had turned to something else, something deeper, something dangerous. Daniel did not smile. He simply stood tall, his breath heavy. "You came here with arrogance, but you will leave with respect. Remember what you saw today. Remember what it means to be human." The square thundered again with cheers. The alien silence was the loudest victory Earth had ever known. That night, when the sisters returned to their quarters, they did not laugh. Instead, they sat in silence, their minds replaying Daniel's trials. Each of them felt something they could not explain: admiration, respect, and a strange pull in their hearts. They had come to Earth as judges. They now remained as something else entirely, changed forever by one man's defiance. And though none of them spoke it aloud, each sister carried the same thought as they looked out at the stars. Perhaps the human was not just strong enough to win their bet. Perhaps he was strong enough to change their future.